You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. Your commander of common sense right here. And this segment with the new secretary, I should say, of the Veterans Administration, David Shulkin. This is brought to you by Dominion Energy, supporting and hiring veterans through its Troops to Energy program. That is Dominion Energy, and we appreciate that. Joining us now, the new Secretary of the Veterans Administration, David Shulkin. He was previously an undersecretary to the Department of Veterans Affairs. He was unanimously confirmed by the Senate, 100-0, the only President Trump nominee that got unanimous support in the Senate. So that's a big deal. And David Shulkin, a doctor, is the first VA secretary to not have served in the military, but he was delivered as a baby on an Army base. Secretary Shulkin, good to have you with us, sir.
I'm glad to be here this morning.
Okay, when President Trump campaigned, and he came to Virginia several times on this particular issue, he actually rolled out his promises to reform the VA at the first rally that he had in Virginia on a battleship, and then came back to Virginia Beach and did the same thing. What are some of the key changes, sir, that you're going to be able to make that is consistent with Trump's plan and VA promise?
Well, I think that, as you said, the president was very clear that he expects us to do much better for our country's veterans, and that commitment to doing better, he and I talk about on a very regular basis. He is very involved in making sure that we're making progress, and that progress involves giving veterans greater choice over their places to get health care. It involves making sure that the people who work in the VA system are held accountable to serve our veterans in the way that we want them to. And it also involves changing the way we do business. One of his commitments was to open up a White House hotline, and today is our first day of operating that White House hotline. So one by one, we're going through and making sure we're honoring the president's commitments.
Mr. Secretary, you have said that you've done a top-to-bottom review of the VA and some of the problems. Now, of course, many of us understand that the VA has been a total disaster. Wait lines, fraud, people lying on the time people are waiting, misinformation in files. When your predecessor came in, when Barack Obama brought in your predecessor, Secretary McDonald, we got the same story. He was going to fix all this stuff. He was there 2 weeks, and he was defending some of the employees and the fraud that had gone on at the VA. Why are you, sir, going to be different?
Well, first of all, I think you're seeing many of the problems in the VA have been going on for decades and have spanned multiple administrations. What I did yesterday from the White House was I actually laid out exactly where all those problems are and put a stake in the ground that we will be accountable for fixing these problems. Many of the problems require cooperation with Congress, and I am working closely with the House and Senate to actually tackling these problems that have been there for years and years. But on the issue of having employees and leadership that are acting ethical and in the right way to serve veterans, I have made it clear I will not be tolerating employees staying on who deviate from those values. And you've seen that I have begun to start removing significant numbers of leaders and staff that deviate from those values.
So can you outline, Mr. Secretary, some of the immediate changes that you're going to make where we're going to be able to see through the Veterans Administration, we're going to be able to see demonstrative change?
Well, the most important that I think the country has seen is the president's budget. The president has proposed a budget that honors that commitment to do better for veterans, and we're seeing that put into action right now. We're also seeing plans put in place to modernize the VA system. I will be announcing in a short time a decision about how to modernize all of our information technology solutions for veterans, a decision that has been put off for years and decades, actually. You will see new decisions about how do we modernize our facilities. And we are putting in legislative requests for a new law that would allow veterans greater choice in their health care decisions.
For those VA employees that are either been tagged with being totally incompetent or committed fraud, I mean, there was a big effort to get rid of a lot of them. Congress even passed a law. Nothing happened. I mean, under your predecessor, Secretary McDonald, I think 2 people were fired. Are you going to be able to get rid of incompetent workers within the VA system, sir, that are not doing the job, and those that have committed fraud? Are you going to be able to fire them and just get them out of there?
Well, I am doing this now, and you're saying that I'm doing this to the best that I can do, but I've said that I need the law changed in order to allow me to do this in a way that I think needs to be done. The House has passed an accountability bill. The bill is now going before the Senate, and I've urged the Senate to pass this bill, that this is a bill that we need in order to accomplish exactly what you've talked about.
Who would not be in favor of that? I mean, what senator have you talked to that said, no, we're not in favor of that? I mean, veterans all over the United States are suffering as a result of the incompetence and the fraud going on. That bill was passed in the House months and months and months ago. It's still sitting in the Senate going nowhere. Republicans control the Senate. Why is it just sitting there?
Well, I am confident that this bill is moving forward. I think that this is something that the Senate will be taking up as soon as they return from their recess. I do believe that we will get the support to pass it. I think the debate that's been going on has been to make sure that employees have the appropriate due process, and that's something that I support. I want our employees to be able to use a due process, but once that process has gone through and there are still significant disciplinary concerns, I want the authority to be able to move those people out.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense, and all of us should be putting pressure on our U.S. senators, especially here in Virginia, to back the House bill which came out of the House, which is the VA Accountability Act. Why a senator would be holding this up is beyond me based on everything that has happened. I got a question here from Joe in Suffolk who says, can you ask the Secretary of the VA why they simply cannot hire enough primary care doctors to get the job for us done? Do you have an answer for that, Mr. Secretary?
Well, there's a shortage of primary care doctors around the country, and so VA is competing in already what is a very narrow labor pool of primary care doctors. But what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to pay our doctors competitively, and we're working to do that. We are hiring primary care doctors, but certainly we want more to be able to choose to come to VA because there is a shortage of them.
Now, Secretary Shulkin, we understand you're coming to our facility today in Hampton, right?
Yes, I'm looking forward to that.
What are some of the things when you're spending the time at our Hampton Veterans Facility, Mr. Secretary, what are some of the things that you're going to be looking for specifically?
Well, I do want to come down. I want to talk to veterans. I want to talk to the staff, and I want to spend time with leadership to see how we can help them. I know in the Hampton area we're really growing so rapidly in terms of the veterans that we serve that we're out of space, and we need to build a new outpatient center in the Hampton area. That's something that we've proposed. We're waiting for Congress to authorize that lease. So I want to go down there personally and see the situation and then meet with members of Congress to make sure we can get that project moving because veterans need it.
All right, Mr. Secretary, we're out of time. I want to thank the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Secretary David Shulkin, for being with us. We'll be in our Hampton location today. Mr. Secretary, we're 100% behind you. We represent a lot of veterans in our area, as you know, in Virginia and North Carolina, where my listeners are. This has been a major issue for a very long time. And I have to tell you, sir, that a lot of us are very frustrated with the inaction. And your predecessor, Mr. McDonald, came in with high hopes, and he just didn't get anything done. And so you're the guy to make it happen, right?
Well, thank you. We appreciate your support, and just watch. We're serious about fixing these issues, and we appreciate all your listeners' support.
All right, sir. I'm a believer, and
Thank you.
I know you're going to make it happen. Thanks for being with us.